Thanks for dropping in. In this video, I get told off in the comments, I find out that 10-year-old PCs don't always have 10-year-old thermal paste, and I use purple stuff. Last video, I had a look at 4 HP 260 G1 USFF PCs. I installed SSDs and reconfigured the RAM, as well as generally checking that they worked. In the comments, it was suggested that I'd overlooked the CPUs, and given that these were about 10 years old, I should have put new thermal paste on. They were correct. Given that these were low power CPUs in the form of Celeron's 2957Us, and the fact that the fan wasn't going crazy on any of them, I hadn't thought too hard about it. But indeed, 10-year-old thermal paste would be thermal concrete by now. And maybe the temps were going sky high, I just didn't realise it. So, to remind you, there were 4 PCs, 2 with 128GB SSDs and 1 times 4GB RAM, and 2 with 60 or 64GB SSDs and 4GB of RAM, but as 2x2GB configuration. So I took each one, and with Open Hardware Monitor and Prime 95 open, I gave each CPU a 10-minute Prime 95 stress test. While not being exhaustive, if there was an issue with the dissipation of heat, this should show it. The maximum temperature for the Celeron 2957U is 100 degrees C, and the ambient temperature in the room was about 19 degrees C. So for the first PC, which has 128GB SSD and 1 times 4GB of RAM, after a sped up time lapse, showed the maximum temperature reached being 46 and 45 degrees C on the 2 cores and 46 degrees C on the package as a whole. Not bad, and better thermals than I would have thought a 10-year-old thermal paste could manage. After testing all 4 PCs, I found them all to have surprisingly good max temperatures, the worst one being the false PC with a 64GB SSD and 2x2GB of RAM, which had 52 degrees C on all cores and the package. Still not bad. A point I noticed was the 2 PCs with the 2x2GB RAM configuration had slightly higher temperatures than the 2 PCs with the 1 times 4GB configuration. Also, these 2 PCs' maximum power draw was slightly higher as well. This may be due to the silicon lottery, with these 2 CPUs needing slightly more voltage, so run slightly hotter, or it may be that running 2 memory channels rather than just the one results in slightly higher power and temperature. This could be looked at by rearranging the RAM. Let me know in the comments if you'd like that looked at. For now, I took the 4th PC, the hottest running one, and opened it up to see what state the thermal paste was in. As discussed in the previous video, opening it up was easy, just 1 thumb screw and 2 posi drive screws, and then the bottom then just slides out. First off, I detached the fan plug, which was slightly awkward for my fat fingers, but not too bad. I then grabbed my Torx screwdrivers, as the fan was held on with 2 of these screws, while the heatsink was held on with 4. For the heatsink, I tried to release the pressure on the diagonally opposite screws as equally as possible, so as to avoid unequal high force on the CPU. Once done, the heatsink lifted off easily. Underneath, I was surprised to find wet thermal paste. This will explain the good thermals, and not looking like 10 years old. I can, however, also see dried thermal paste around the CPU silicon and on the heatsink. I think someone has applied fresh thermal paste recently, while not completely removing the old stuff. Oh well, I'll clean it up and add some new and see if that makes any difference at all. To start, I just used some kitchen towel to remove the worst of the paste from the heatsink. In this we can see the lumps of the probable 10-year-old paste. To clean the rest, I use the purple stuff. This is methylated spirit, also known as denatured alcohol in the States. Isopropyl alcohol is generally recommended for cleaning paste, which I think is sold as rubbing alcohol in the US. However, here in the UK, it isn't as easy to get hold of and isn't available in every shop. Methylated spirit is 70 or 80% ethanol with some other stuff in to make it poisonous and nauseating for human consumption, so it can be sold for DIY application. It can contain some methanol, which is poisonous, for example. I find it works fine for cleaning thermal paste, in the absence of isopropyl alcohol. So with this in hand, and gloves on due to the possible methanol content, I clean off the heatsink and CPU using cotton wool buds or Q-tips. Once complete, we have a nice clean CPU die. I've only got generic thermal paste at the moment, so that will have to do. and I reassemble the PC, screwing down the heatsink equally from opposite corners. Then reattaching the fan and replacing the fan plug. Now the big question is, have I completely destroyed the PC? Luckily not, and it boots fine. I then run Prime 95 again for 10 minutes while monitoring temperatures with Open Hardware Monitor. And after 10 minutes, the temperatures are a whopping 1 degree C lower with the new paste, which is easily within the limit of error. So there we are. Occasionally you can buy a 10-year-old PC where the thermal paste has already been replaced, and replacing new thermal paste with new thermal paste doesn't do a lot. On that bombshell, please like and subscribe if you liked this video, leave a comment below, take care, and I'll see you again soon.